The Buffalo Bills are sending star wide receiver Stephon Diggs to the Houston Texans. In return, the Bills reportedly will receive a second-round pick in 2025.
And now he's going to Houston. Wherever he goes, the quarterbacks look better. And C.J. Stroud was looking big time without him.
They right there now, right underneath that Kansas City Chief team. They right underneath that. They jump in front of Baltimore for me.
Do they?
Yes, they do. Think about it, man.
Well, Keyshawn, I have been thinking about it, and I've been thinking a lot about the Houston Texans over the past few months, and while I am ecstatic for the 2023 season they had, and for the future of guys like CJ Stroud, Will Anderson, and Tank Dell, the hype train for the Texans needs to slow down. Now, if you think this is a video that's going to be about how the Texans are destined to fail and that they were a one-year wonder, then this is not the video for you. The Texans had a lot of success in 2023 and are looking to build on it in 2024, but it's never as easy as you think, and the path to success and championships in the NFL or any professional sport is not linear. Teams typically do not go from 2 wins to 10 to Super Bowl to dynasty. There are ups and downs in every sport and for every franchise, and in today's video, we are going to break down why the Texans hype train needs to slow down. One of the biggest reasons has nothing to do with anybody in particular on the Texans, as much as it is with how sports media is and why there is a vast contrast between what the media projects and reality. Now let's dive in. One of the biggest reasons why the Houston Texans hype train needs to slow down entering the 24 season is whenever there's a team that has an insane draft class, like the Texans did in 2023, or has a crop of young talent like the Texans do, which isn't just limited to their 2023 class either, as they have other good players like Derek Stingley Jr. and Nico Collins. The initial thing to do is project the absolute best moving forward for not just 1 or 2 guys, but the entire roster. When you factor in the Chiefs becoming a dynasty and another team like the Bengals having an injury-filled year, and the Ravens losing several coaches and players in free agency after they went to the AFC Championship game, along with Buffalo's financial bill effectively coming due after going in for several years, you get this perfect storm of everyone hopping on the Texans bandwagon, at least from a media perspective, and everyone is quick to think they are the next team up. But as cliche and as simple as this sounds, this next point needs to be hammered home, and it's that winning a single Super Bowl is insanely difficult. The Bengals were supposed to be the next team up after beating the Chiefs in the postseason back in 2021, and in the 2 years since, they lost in the AFC Championship game to Kansas City and missed the playoffs this past year due in large part to injury. We are now entering year 5 with Joe Burrow, year 7 with Lamar Jackson, and year 7 with Josh Allen, and have a combined 2 MVPs and 1 Super Bowl appearance between the 3 players. Obviously, football is a team game, and it's not fair to blame the entirety of each of their seasons on them, but the point of getting to a Super Bowl when you have a team that's in the middle of a dynasty is incredibly difficult. And one thing that I think is conveniently forgotten by the media, or at least it's not pointed out that I've seen, is the Texans, for as fun as they were in 2023, like during the Bucs game in which CJ Stroud threw for 470 yards and 5 touchdowns, or the immediate ensuing week against the Bengals when they went into the jungle and won, due in some part to Stroud's 350-plus yard performance in a 30-27 victory. Well, the Texans were absolutely embarrassed by the Ravens in the divisional round of the playoffs with a score of 34-10. For anyone who may not remember the lone Texans touchdown in this game, it was on a 67-yard punt return touchdown by Steven Sims. That's it. They also didn't enter the red zone during this game despite having 9 possessions. 10 technically if you include a kneel down before halftime, but I wasn't going to include that, but for any technically guys out there, I will say 9 possessions for the Texans. Anyways, the Ravens defense was one of the best not just in 2023, but over the past few years, and you can very easily make the argument that the Texans even being in that game, in the divisional round of the playoffs, was a huge win for them in itself. And it was, and the Texans players, front office, and fan base should be absolutely thrilled with what they accomplished in 2023. I don't want that to be lost in today's video, but when you break down the Texans' final 8 games of the season, meaning after the win in Cincinnati, how many games did they win that they shouldn't have? I understand you can't control who you play and you have to win the games on the schedule, but the most impressive win in the final 8 games was a win over the Gardner Minshew-led Colts, who was a backup quarterback, by the way, and after that it was probably the Cardinals, who had Kyler Murray by this time, but ultimately a team that finished with a top 4 overall draft pick. Their other 3 wins were over the Broncos at home and a sweep of the Titans. Lost within the Texans' hype train is the Week 8 game against Carolina, in which the Panthers actually beat the Texans, and the 30-6 beatdown the Texans suffered at the hands of the Jets. Obviously, those 2 games proved to be outliers, and especially the Jets game, but my point is, this team is far from perfect. Now, I do want to add that I don't think there is a 24-point difference between the Ravens and Texans today, and I really liked the improvements the Texans made to their roster this offseason. Bringing in Danielle Hunter in free agency was a tremendous move, and especially for the contract they got him for. We often talk about draft steals, but I thought Danielle Hunter at $49 million over 2 years was a win-win for both sides. 48 of the $49 million is guaranteed for Danielle, and I know the guarantees are high for him, but it doesn't matter because of how short this deal is. The Texans won't run into financial problems because of the Danielle Hunter contract. They're not going to say to Nico Collins, "Hey man, we like what you've done, but we can't afford to pay you because of the Danielle contract." All of the players they drafted are young, and they're at least a year away from signing a big contract extension. Although Nico, in theory, could be signed to an extension soon because he is entering a contract year, but even if he does sign a long-term deal, they can either backload the contract or have the big money from the contract really kick in after Danielle's contract expires, if worse comes to worse. Pairing Hunter with Will Anderson was a great move by GM Nick Caserio, and I also like the moves to bring in Denico Autry and Azeez Al-Shaair, both who came over from the Titans. My only concern with Autry, of course, is age, as he will be 34 at the start of the 2024 season, and he's not going to play forever. Is he a temporary upgrade? Yes, but even within the Autry signing, I think there should be reasonable concern that his level of play will dip off at some point, even within the 2-year deal. I did like the Azeez Al-Shaair signing, as he had over 160 tackles for the Titans last year, and he can again play cleanup behind a disruptive defensive line in 2024. The Texans' pass rush will be solid if everyone stays healthy, but the one big concern I have with this roster, that I have with this team moving forward, is secondary. More specifically, their corners outside of Derek Stingley Jr. The corners outside of Derek Stingley are guys like Jeff Okudah, Miles Bryant, Kamari Lassiter, and CJ Henderson. And when you're in a conference like the AFC with as many quarterbacks as there are, I'm not going to name them, you can start to picture those quarterbacks in terms of who you think is a good quarterback in that conference. There's a lot of concern there with those corners, even for as good as the Texans' pass rush is. Now, if we play this scenario out with Jeff Okudah, maybe he has a good year, but do we think he's going to be a Pro Bowl or All-Pro player in his 5th season despite never showing signs of being that player? I mean, if you do, you're entitled to that opinion, but I personally don't think he will be. Now, admittedly, I wasn't the biggest Kamari Lassiter fan coming out of Georgia, and we can't show his tape because the SEC and the All-22, it's kind of not my decision, but anyway, we're talking about a nickel corner that was sub-30th percentile in weight, arm length, and wingspan. And when you have all 3 of those deficiencies coming out of Georgia and you're going to the NFL level in a division that has solid quarterback play and especially really good offensive minds, I think this goes back to the best case scenario projecting and thinking that Kamari is going to be this player that, quite frankly, I don't think he will be at the NFL level, especially as a rookie. And this goes into the 2024 Texans projection, where people automatically assume that, they're going to have Stingley, they're going to have Lassiter, and that he's just going to slide right in and he's going to play at an above average level, and that he's going to lock guys down in the slot week in and week out. And I think there's going to be one very big learning curve for Kamari, especially in the NFL. Obviously, there's a lot of comparisons to Brian Branch, who just had a phenomenal rookie year, but Branch Branch was a lot better of a prospect coming out of Alabama last year than Kamari was this year at Georgia. So, needless to say, whether it's Okudah, whether it's Miles Bryant, who signed a one-year deal for less than $2 million, so that kind of shows the player that you're getting in Miles Bryant, or another former first-round pick in CJ Henderson, I have a lot of concerns with the Texans outside of Derek Stingley at the cornerback position. What also comes with a division title is playing a number 1 schedule the following year. For anyone who may not know, the way the schedule for the following year works is based largely off of the previous year. The 2023 Texans won their division, so they will be playing the other division winners from the AFC from 2023. They do luck out in the fact they play both Buffalo and Baltimore at home and have 9 home games versus 8 road games, but they do have a very few tough games this year, like going to Kansas City, going to Green Bay, and going to MetLife to play the Jets, to name a few. It's one thing to beat the Kenny Pickett-led Steelers or the Derek Carr-led Saints or the Titans twice, but it's another to be playing the Chiefs, Lions, Ravens, Bills, Packers, Jets, and depending which team shows up, the Cowboys and Dolphins outside of division play. It's also another thing to be the feel-good story during everyone's rookie year, and to win a playoff game, and to be the darlings of the NFL for a year, only for expectations to increase extremely the following year when it's time to prove who you are and who the media thinks you are. And again, to be clear, I don't think this is a CJ Stroud is going to regress thing, as much as it is to take a step back and look where this team actually is. There's another part of the Texans' 2024 outlook that concerns me, and it's Stefon Diggs. It's one thing to leave one team by forcing your way out and wanting the ball more and getting a fresh start elsewhere, but I think it's another thing to do it twice. Diggs' last 100-yard game came in Week 6 of the 23 season, as he started the 23 season off with 5 100-yard games in the first 6. He had just 3 touchdowns in the final 11 games of the 23 season, along with 58 receptions, and was frustrated with how his time ended in Buffalo. We saw the outbursts on the sidelines at times, whether it was in the playoff game against Cincinnati, or even dating back to his Minnesota days. What if there's a game in Week 16 or in the playoffs when the Texans are looking for a big win and Stefon isn't getting the ball? He's also in a contract year, which was a questionable decision based on the contract, but I have a lot of concerns with Diggs and am hoping for the best with how he plays in Houston. Also, to address this, because I'm sure it will be brought up in the comments. Yes, I am a Vikings fan. No, I do not care how Diggs' tenure ended in Minnesota. I am bringing up a point that legitimately concerns me with the future of the Texans, and something that could derail their path to success, and we've seen it multiple times before. And speaking of limited time in Houston, I would be pretty surprised if offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick stays beyond the 24 season with the Texans. I know the easy thing to do is point to Ben Johnson and look how he stayed with the Lions past the point we thought he would leave to become a head coach, but Ben is the outlier and not the standard. With another season remotely close to the season the Texans just had, which from an offensive perspective is very possible, Bobby will probably land any job he wants. Admittedly, I am a lot higher than most on the Colts, and they are my sleeper team that can make a lot of noise entering the 24 season. They will be a thorn not just in the Texans sides, but in a lot of other team sides with a healthy Anthony Richardson. I also think Trevor Lawrence will have the best year of his career, as he is in a contract year, and if he balls out, he could have a $250 million plus contract within the next year. Do I like where the Texans are? Yes, absolutely, and I never would have thought they would have had the season they had last year. Nobody did. But I also think it's fair to temper expectations and to not expect them to be the next great team. I can easily see them winning anywhere from 9 to 12 games in 2024, but beyond that, picking them to win the AFC, to me at least, is a tall ask in this loaded of a conference. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 39% of people watching are subscribed. It helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.